Yesterday we were discussing how the Buddha's expression of Kanika Chitta has been given by the commentaries as Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration. That is, the insight, momentary concentration, Vipassana Kanika Samadhi, which means that every time new objects arise, momentarily, continuously in the body, one notes in order to concentrate one's mind, such as Vipassana Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration of insight. In the text also are given in this Visuddhimagga, path of purification, Mahatika, that this kind of momentary concentration has the effectiveness of calming the meditative mind. Also given in the section on in and out breath, that this Kanika Samadhi has the ability of calming the mind. It has been supported in this way. Today we shall continue to elaborate on this point as promised yesterday. This Pali known as Sopihi, which means this momentary concentration also has the ability of calming the meditative mind, Vipassana, Bhavana Chitta, to calm the hindrances to progress, nivaranas, so that these hindrances to progress cannot disturb or interrupt the meditation practice. So it is not just the absorption concentration of Samadhi, that is in the practice of mundane jhana. The momentary concentration also has that kind of quality of calming the mind. In what way this momentary concentration has the ability of calming the meditative mind? That would be the question. If that is the question, the answer is this. The expression in Pali, Aramne Nirandara, Ekakare na Bhotamano. Aramne Nirandara, without interruption. If the noting of the objects is continuous without any interruption, then so that there is no gap in between, then these hindrances to progress will not have a chance to come in between. Nirantara, this is the expression, meaning uninterrupted flow. That means continuous flow. Ekakarana, as though the concentration is one-pointed. So every time the object arises, you note continuously, so that there's no gap in between. Then your noting mind will build up into a wonderful energy of mindfulness, so as not to allow these hindrances to progress. Then it will have the same capacity or same quality or effectiveness as the absorption concentration in calming the hindrances to progress. So in order to have this result, all one has got to do is note every arising object, energetically focusing on the ever arising object. Then your Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, will be able to calm the mind so as not to allow these hindrances to interrupt. In order to give an example, now the flow on which yogis are sitting is made up of flow boats. In ordinary sense, the boats are not continuous. There are gaps in between, allowing dirt or dust to get in between. But when they are constructed in such a way as to allow no gap in between, such as putting in between these glue or something like that, in between these floorboards, then they become like continuous plane, so that no dust or dirt will come in between, so there is no gap in between these floorboards. So too, in the practice of meditation, if the mindfulness is continuous, noting, energetically focusing on the ever-arising object, not to cause any gap in between, then it becomes one-pointed, it's like one-pointed concentration. The objects may differ. For instance, objects of meditation may be rising and falling, or sitting and touching, all the sensations. However, although the arising object may be different, the mindfulness is so continuous that it is just like one continuous flow, like current. Because it is made up of the same kind, same nature of concentration, continuously arising, such as given by the expression Bhavata Mano, flowing like a current. Then it will not allow these disturbing elements, opposing elements to come in between to disturb you, as is given by the expression Patipachana Anabhibhuto, free of disturbances. As much as one is free of disturbances, this kind of momentary concentration that you are practicing will have the same quality or effectiveness as the absorption concentration, which is one-pointed, falling on single conceptual object. What we've been talking about in respect of the momentary concentration rises at the purification of, at the stage of the purification of the mind, known as Chitta Visuddhi, that is discerning mind and body and the conditionality of mind and body, at the initial stage of insight knowledge. However, there are more powerful concentrations which can overcome these opposing elements, especially when one reaches the higher insight knowledge, such as the knowledge of arising and passing away, or fading away of objects, and one step further, seeing the dissolution, knowledge of the dissolution of objects, Vanga Jnana, seeing only the dissolution. Then that kind of Khanika Samadhi, which arises at that stage, will be very powerful, so powerful as to be really on equal terms with the Apana Samadhi, absorption, concentration. Especially when you come to the higher insight knowledge of formations, towards knowledge of equanimity towards all formations, known as Sankharupa Jnana. At this stage, the insight knowledge is said to become very powerful, called Balava Vipassana. The mind becomes very energized, at which stage there will be no chance of hindrances to progress coming in between, intervene you. Then your Samadhi, Khanika Samadhi, will become on equal footing, on real equal footing as your absorption, concentration, Apana Samadhi, in calming the meditative mind. And at this stage, even if you come across desirable and undesirable objects, desirable or undesirable objects, the mind will not be sensitive, the mind will be balanced. At the stage of this knowledge about equanimity, knowledge of equanimity towards all formations, Sankalpa, the mind will not be sensitive at all. So that even if you come across desirable object, you will not develop any desire. And even if you try to send your mind towards that desirable object, it will bounce back. And same thing with undesirable object. If you think about somebody you are not getting along with, for instance, ill will, this mind will not go there. And even if it goes there, it will bounce back. The example given is like the boomerang, the weapon used by Aborigines in Australia, which when thrown away to hit the prey or the animals, the birds, will come back to the thrower. So too with the mind of the yogi. The mind will bounce back in a very wonderful manner. So that this Kanika Samadhi of insight, momentary concentration of insight, will not be disturbed by hindrances or hindrances to progress, such as raga, lust or craving, that the mind is not moved, not shaken, not affected at all, because your meditative mind becomes so energized, so powerful, that it comes to possess an upper hand on these hindrances to progress. Because of the maturity of this insight knowledge, you will be able to withstand the worldly conditions of good and bad. There is a power of overwhelming, overpowering power, overwhelming power, or overpowering, plus the ability to withstand, to bear with these worldly conditions, so that you will neither be elated about good, attractive things, nor dejected by undesirable, unattractive things. Instead, your mind becomes balanced in between, what is known as equipoised, in a very wonderful manner. You become very satisfied. Unless the mind is cultivated, unless the mind is molded in the way you like to be molded, then the mind will remain out of shape, will be disorderly, because it remains very weak, especially unless the mind is cultivated with the practice of way of mindfulness, Satipatthana. The mind will become undeveloped with lack of growth, so that the mind will not have the energy to withstand these worldly conditions, so that there will be no power of resilience, because the mind has not reached maturity if the mind is not cultivated with the practice of Satipatthana. Like the case of young plants or tender fruits, they will not be able to withstand any rough touch or weather conditions. Instead, if the weather conditions are harsh, or you touch it very hard in a very harsh manner, they will be spoiled, they will rot. So, if they are developed and made to grow and increase, then they will be able to overcome these advanced weather conditions of heat and cold, and also the advanced conditions of the touch and handling, because they have reached a developed, mature stage. And if they are improved gradually, then they will be able to withstand such things. So too with the mind. If the mind is cultivated with the practice of the way of mindfulness, Satipatthana, by developing energy, mental energy, then one will be able to possess the power of resilience. At this point, when the text is given, or when the texts are given, two kinds of power, namely power of intellectual reasoning, Paṭisaṅkhārā, Visankhana Bala, and the second one is Bhavana Bala, the power of meditation or the power of meditative practice. Two things. The first one is the power of intellectual reasoning. The second one is the power of meditative practice. So prior to the practice, what you should do is you should cultivate your life, your mind, with the first one, namely Paṭisaṅkhana Bala, the power of intellectual reasoning, in order to cultivate your physical, verbal, mental behaviors beforehand. Then, in your own right, or in their own right, they will be able to control your life or your mind. And in this respect, there are two things, two accomplishments, namely Sadhaka Sampajana and Sappaya Sampajana. Now, as for the first one, that is comprehending whether an undertaking is beneficial or not. That is the first comprehension. That means you have to, before you do or say something, you have to reason out, or you have to comprehend whether such an undertaking of action or speech is beneficial or not. Is it going to be successful or is it going to be a failure? So you've got to try and reason out, comprehend it before you do or speak. So if by intellectual reasoning or comprehending, if that undertaking of speech and or action and speech is not beneficial, then you don't do it. You can control yourself. And even now when you combine these two things, that is beneficial and suitability, even if an undertaking is beneficial, if it's not suitable, then you will not undertake it to act or speak. So, before, when you are doing or speaking, you try to reason up intellectually whether this task is going to be beneficial and suitable. If they are both beneficial and suitable, then you go ahead. If you have to do it, that is the first kind of intellectual, first kind of energy or first kind of power. That is the power of intellectual reasoning. You cultivate your mind or life in a rough way, in this manner. Then, as much as you are able to undertake or practice this power of intellectual reasoning, Paṭisaṅkhana, then you come to possess what is known as Nipekha Panya, the power of reasoning. the knowledge of the wisdom of reasoning, of the wisdom of reasoning wisdom, we call it. So that as you are able to develop this wisdom, then this kind of wisdom will be useful both in the worldly matters as well as in the spiritual Dhamma matters. As family people, this kind of reasoning, intellectual reasoning, is very essential, very useful when you are going about in your life seeking food, shelter and clothing in order to keep your life in order, to know that an undertaking or speech or action is suitable, is beneficial and suitable. And if they are both beneficial and suitable, in most cases you go ahead and it will be successful, it will be flawless, unblemished. If it's flawless, unblemished, it will be pure, it will be free of impurities, then you'll be happy. Your life will be, you have a satisfied life. So such is the power of intellectual reasoning, Padisankhana Bala. And when this power of intellectual reasoning reaches maturity, it is also known as Padihariya Panya. It is the wisdom, knowing the benefit and suitability of an undertaking. So, in this way, in essence, this Padihariya Panya is made up of these two things: comprehending the benefit or suitability of an undertaking, Sattaka Samajanya and Sapaya Samajanya. Knowing whether an undertaking is beneficial and knowing whether an undertaking is suitable, which is very important in ordinary life. As to the second power, namely Bhavana Bala, power of meditation or meditative power, is none other than the practice of Satipatthana, the power built up by the practice of Satipatthana. In short, the exertion of energy, not to be slack and not to just be sluggish and laid back. One has got to apply ardent energy in order to know every arising object which arises every moment, every second of the time. Not to slack, not to be sluggish. One has got to be energetic. If one is sluggish, then one will not be able to catch up with the first arising object of attention. On top of that, one needs to be alert, diligent, wakeful all the time. That also is important. If you only exert these powers, then all the positive, wholesome mental states will follow, such as the power of mindfulness, leading to the power of deepened concentration, so that noting mind, there's no wavering of the noting mind, no distraction, no restlessness of the mind. Then you'll be able to see things in their true nature, such as seeing in a clear-cut manner the mind and the body, and seeing the conditionality of mind and body. You'll come to possess the power of such vision. And then towards the apprehension of the universal characteristics, such as the arising and passing away of objects, their unsatisfactoriness, and their selfless nature, until you are able to see the fading away of mind-body objects at the stage of the first arising and passing away of phenomena, namely Uriyadya Jnana. And as we discussed, when we go one step further, seeing the dissolution of objects, Vanga Jnana, knowledge of dissolution, until we come to the knowledge of equanimity towards all formations, Sankalpika Jnana. It becomes very powerful, known as Balava Vipassana, powerful insight. At that time, you will reach the stage of apprehending the stillness of formations with the perception of cessation, with the path and its fruit. Then you are set to have accomplished the power, or you come to possess the power of meditation, or meditative power, bhavana bala. If not, if you are slack in the practice, your mindfulness will not be properly developed, it will not grow, and if it's not developed, it will remain weak and will not be able to withstand the worldly conditions or bear with the difficult situations or the power of resilience. So then you need to be continuous in your mindfulness in order to be able to overcome these hindrances to progress. Then you are set to come to possess the power of resilience. You have fulfilled the mental energy, as we have discussed. The definition of yogi as the yogi who practices exerts energy, and one stage after another continuously. Then such a person is known as yogi, as is given by this expression, Yoga Payudadaya Yogi. So that your meditative mind will grow and develop and increase. Then you will become a dedicated yogi, dedicated meditator, at which stage your knowledge also will grow, increase and develop. Such is coming to possess the power of meditation or meditative mind, bhavana bala. And as such, if you are able to become a dedicated yogi, practice in the spirit of this definition of the yogi, then you are said to have come to possess this bhavana bala, the power of meditation or meditative power. So in order to note every arising object as it arises, you have to be diligent, applying ardent energy, wakeful, active, so as not to miss the objects. Then you are said to be energizing your power of mindfulness, leading to the deepening of your concentration, in this case, momentary concentration, Kanika Samadhi. As you fulfill this Kanika Samadhi, you are bound to see things in their true nature from the basics, progressing along the stages of insight in a clear-cut, discriminating manner. Thus, the energy, you are said to be allowing energy to arise in your stream of consciousness. Such is a positive sign, so that as much as you possess this positive sign, there will be negative sign on the other side. That is, your undermining hindrances to progress, beginning with the sense desire hindrances, will diminish, will show a negative sign. So as much as you do that in a positive, there will be negative on the other side. So that you have this Patibhakkhana Navi Buddha, so that you will be overcoming or overpowering these undermining elements, namely hindrances to progress, so that you will be free of them. In this way, your meditative mind or your momentary concentration will have the same footing as the absorption, concentration, apana samadhi. The two will be on equal terms. Then, since your meditative mind is free from hindrances to progress, it has the power of calming these undermining elements. So one has got to practice, strive in order to gain this kind of concentration. And 1 stroke, 2 strokes, 3 strokes, and so on continuously, so that when you are able to do that, remember, you come to remember the method of concentration, apprehending the sign of concentration, remembering it, recording it, and you can repeat it. And such is given as one of the factors for the sharpening of the 5 controlling factors. We stop here for the day.